I'm Samir Khandekar. I'm a software engineer on the Microsoft Authentication team for .NET, also known as MCL.NET. And this talk is about authenticating the users and calling the protected APIs in your MAUI applications. Let's get started. Start with some history of authentication. It started with storing the username and the password as a plain text. Some of you may remember the sites from the old days where they would say, give us your email and the password, and we'll send invitations to your friends. What they would do is that they would store your username and the password as a plain text for your email, log in as you, get your contact information, send the email on your behalf. And they had access to everything in your email. They could do more than what they could do. And this is highly insecure because the store is a plain text, there are a lot of writes. But they needed a way to get the data from the third party. So then came Oauth. So what is Oauth? So it evolved into Oauth 2. What is Oauth 2? Oauth 2 provides scoped access to the resources, that it will provide access resource only to the places where user permits it. There's a private dialog between the authorization server and the user. So when the user enters the username and the password, it goes only to the authorization server, and the client or the app doesn't know anything about it. So let's see how it looks at the high level. So it has 4 parts: authorization server, client. Client is actually an app, resource owner, which is the end user, and the resource server, which hosts the protected resource or protected APIs. So way in which it works is that when the client wants to access a protected resource or protected API, it will ask the authorization server, give me the authorization token. So authorization server will give back a URL which will pop up a web dialog box, and resource owner, that is the end user, will enter the username and the password in it. That username and the password goes directly to the authorization server, and it does not go to the client. It does not go to the app. Authorization server will validate it. If it requires any other checks such as multi-factor authentication, conditional access, it will perform all those, and it will return 2 things to the client. There is access token and the refresh token. What the client would do is that it is client's responsibility to store the refresh token securely, and it will pass the access token as a bearer token to the resource server. The resource server will take the token and say, no, these are the, and ask the resource server will ask the authorization server, hey, please validate this token for these resources. And if authorization server says yes, it will return the protected resource or protected API call results back to the client. And the resource owner, as the user, can see the results. So the results can be protected information such as your banking information, your home address, and the stuff like that. And what this required was, there are a lot of cases where you require user profile information. So OpenID Connect, also known as OIDC, was written on the top of the Oauth 2. And what it does is that it returns the user profile, that's your email address, full name, and stuff like that, back to the caller. And it comes as a form of ID token. So that's OpenID Connect. So how does this protocol look under the cover? So this is the authorization code flow, which is used by the apps. So it has 2 endpoints. Authorized endpoint, the identity platform has 2 endpoints: authorized endpoint and the token endpoint. When the mobile app wants a token, it will call the authorized endpoint, and it will pop up the dialog box. It will fulfill all the conditions, and it will return the authorization code back to the mobile app. Remember, this is an authorization code and not authentication token. The app will take the authorization code, it will combine it with the client ID and pass that to the token endpoint. The token endpoint will take that, validate it, and return back the access token and the refresh token to the app. The client will store the refresh token, and with the access token, we'll call the web API. I explained that earlier. And after some time, it's generally 60 minutes, the access token expires. So what does the app do in that case if it wants to access a resource? It will pass the refresh token client ID to the token endpoint, and the token endpoint will return the new access token and the new refresh token, and the flow continues. So that's how it works in high level. The first part where the user interaction is required is an interactive flow, not interactive flow, it's an interactive acquisition of the token. And the second part where the user intervention is not required, it's a silent acquisition of the token. So it looks pretty complicated, but we at the MCL.NET team made it simple. So if you want to get the authentication in app, what you need to do is that configure the app in the portal. If I tell you how to configure it in the portal, that will itself take an hour, so I won't go into that. You have a link over here which shows how to register it and stuff like that. MCL.NET has two type of clients: confidential client and public client. The confidential client is about servers, that is web APIs, web apps, daemon apps, and things like that. And the public client is for the desktop apps and the mobile apps. So that's the focus of today's talk. It supports two type of accounts: corporate accounts, such as your username at companyname.com. It also supports personal accounts, commonly known as B2C accounts. Those are your personal accounts such as Facebook account, Google account, and also Microsoft personal account. Microsoft personal account can be your Outlook ID, or it can also be your Xbox account. So there are different types. So that's about the configuration, the high level overview. Uh, Regarding the code, there are there are only three cross-platform steps. First, you create the public client application. Then you call the acquire token silent. This makes a call to the backend. If the backend thinks that you require user intervention, it will throw an exception, which is called MCL UI required exception. It's app's responsibility to catch the exception and call the acquire token interactive. And that will launch the browser and get the token like that. So with that, that's the common code. And of course, there's a platform specific code, and the redirect URLs can vary from platform to platform. So I'll show that in the code, but I know most of you are developers and you don't want to see the PowerPoint slides anymore. So we'll go to the demos. The demo has three apps: basic, with broker, and B2C app. And they're currently located in the this folder. I'll give it to you, and we'll shortly publish the sample apps for that. So let's go to the source Visual Studio. I'm using the preview version here. All right, we're all set. Let me close all the windows first. So there's no confusion. Close all tabs. So if you look at the MAUI apps.solution, it has three projects, as I explained: basic, broker, and B2C. Uh, you may be familiar with the MAUI project structure, but in case you're not, uh, MAUI has only one project, and Xamarin Forms used to have 4 projects, so that made things much simpler. If you want a platform-specific code, it's inside the platforms folder. It's an Android, iOS kind of folders. So we are supporting Android and iOS right now. We're still in the preview. We have a preview package available, so that is what is integrated with this. And the way in which the project structure, the basic project is structured and other projects, is that we have the UI code over here, and the non-UI code is in the MCL client and MCL client. So those are two clearly separated. So regarding the UI, basically there are two buttons: sign in and sign out. And as a developers, that's all we need. So as I explained earlier, this is the flow where you call the silent first. Then if you get the result in it, you call the web API, passing in the result. It will get you back the data and show the data. If it throws a required exception, you call the acquire token interactive, and you get the data back. You get the result back, get the data back, and show the result. And if everything goes wrong, you should catch an exception and show the message. Simple. So before I go, this is the common code, and of course there's a sign out code also, which is pretty simple, sign out. So before I go into the platform specific code, I'll start running the app. So while it's loading and other things, I can show you the platform code. All right, the build started. Okay. So in the Android manifest, you have a register activity with a data scheme. So this is a scheme which is the redirect URI which comes back. So when the user authenticates in the web browser, the data goes to the backend, and the backend sends back a redirect URI, and that has to be caught by this particular activity. So it's caught over here. In the main activity, you override on create. Okay, this is the Android redirect URI which was specified when you registered in the portal. So note it down and keep it over here. You configure it over here. You specify the parent window. The parent window is important in Android. In iOS, if you don't have the parent window, that's okay. Uh, However, so these are you override the Android, and platform config is a kind of a small utility which is for configuration, platform specific configuration. It is used by PCA wrapper. And when the URI redirect URI comes back, it comes to the on activity result. So override it and call authentication continuation helper, set authentication continuation, and with that your authentication should get completed. So that's the main activity. Main application is nothing but generated code, MCell activity. You have to declare MCell activity, export it equal to true, and specify the data scheme. That our app is still loading. I'll show the iOS side of it. I won't display the demo iOS right now because it's you'll have to connect to the Mac and go from there. So it's better to do it this way. So on the iOS side, there's a different redirect URI for iOS. So configure that in the on finish launching. And note that I'm not overridden the parent window here because that's not required. Other thing which is there is in the entitlements.plist. This is important. You declare this access to the keychain for this particular key. This is used for SSO. So SSO is something if you have multiple applications from your company, then you don't want user to log in into each application. For example, you have applications such as Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and user should be able to log in into only one of them and others should be able to use it. So when the user logs into one of them, the refresh token is stored securely in the keychain and other apps can use it, so it avoids users authentication. All right, our app is up and running. I'll go into the PCA wrapper as we debug. So let me click on the sign in or type on the sign in. All right, it came to the PCA wrapper. I say it's embedded or not. And let me run. So it came to the constructor. So if you look at the PCA, it is a public client application. We use a builder pattern over here. So create the builder called the create method, passing it the client ID. So client ID is the ID you retrieve when you register the app in the portal. So you get that. This is a redirect URI, which is picks up from platform config that you configure in the platform specific thing. You specify that, hey, you need access to the iOS keychain. That's the one that you specified in the Intune list and call build. So this runs. Then it comes to acquire token silent. So I'll run this. So it should go in. So it comes to the acquire token silent. So what you do here is that get all the accounts, get the first account, and then you call the acquire token silent, passing it the scopes and the account, and call the execute async. So it should return the auth result. But since this is the first time user has not logged in, then it should throw an exception for MCLUR required exception. Let's see. Yeah, it throw an exception, call MCLUR required exception. Let's run this. Okay. This is Acquire Token Interactive. So there are two options here. One is that you can use the system web view or you can use the embedded web view. We recommend using the system web view because it uses the default browser and the browser has the ability to store the username and the password, so user doesn't have to remember that. And if you are using iOS, we recommend using the iOS hide privacy prompt because otherwise a privacy prompt comes up from Apple. So you can hide it by turning this flag on. It's up to you. It's optional. Then there's Acquire Token Interactive. So you pass the system web view and the parent activity window and call execute async. Remember to do configure await false because if there's no configure await false, then it can cause the threading issues. Let's run. So this should bring up my dialog box. They run. Okay. Okay, there was an error, an exception. What I can do right now is that I can close this app and restart it directly from the uh, this itself. This is the app. It's coming up. Click on sign in. It brought up my, so it went to the acquire token salad. It did not find it. So it brought up my acquire token interactive. I'll select the other one. So it asked me, do you want me to continue? I said yes. I'll select the basic. It goes up. A, acquire token interactive call succeeded. So I'll show how it happened in the code. Uh, remember, I'm using the preview version over here. Uh, so what happened is that it went to the acquired tokens, you are required exception. It got a result from here. It passed the call web API with the token. And what it does is internally it calls the HTTP client, creates the HTTP. It's a standard call. It calls the HTTP client, creates a message, and this is the step for the authorization. Like in the message headers, add an authorization header and ask the auth result to give the authorization, create the authorization header. It will do it for you. Send a send a message. You get the response, return it back, and once the response comes back, you get the data over here and display the data. So that's how you see the data in the interactive call. So the title is interactive call. So if I do the silent again, if I do the sign in again, it will go to silent and silent should pick it up. All right, so in the acquire token silent call, it worked. So we are done with, so we are good with that. There's a sign out button which clicks to sign out. So yeah, we are done with this app. I'll show you the other apps. So there are two apps. One is the broker app and other is the B2C app. I'll show you the B2C app, but before I go to B2C app, I'll show you what's in the broker, what's the difference. So the UI part is almost the same. In the wrapper part, uh, you have things over here called, when you construct it, you call it with broker. So that's the time you go the broker and call the, it tells the authentication library that you have to invoke the broker. And silent part is same. And when you go to the acquired interactive, the work is done through the broker, but you still need to pass the parent activity of the window, because if the user has not installed the broker, it will fall back on the system browser and use the system browser. So that's how we acquire the token interactively. So that's the part of the broker platform. If you go the Android side, the Android manifest is a little different. So you get the queries from the authenticators, you get the queries from the company portal. So this basically gets the callback from those things. Pen activities almost the same. You required for thing. This is a generated one. In iOS, you require a little thing differently. In the finished launching, you specify the UI view controller as the parent window, because if you're using the broker, broker would need it. And there's one thing which is different in MAUI as compared to a previous version, that previous version would get the source application and will validate against it, but that support has been taken off by Apple. So what we do is that we want to make sure it comes from the correct broker. So when we make a request to the broker, we pass a nonce to it, and the broker should pass the nonce back in the response. And that's how we authenticate, is it a broker response or not? And based on that, we validate it and set the continuation arc. So this goes the same way. Entitlement plist is the same. So with that, I'll start with the MAUI to B2C app. Set as a startup project. Android. So all right, let's get that going. So while that's going, I'll explain you was different on B2C. So B2C is basically when you configure B2C, it is dependent on the policies. So you configure the policies of how you want the user flow to be. You want the sign up, sign in flow or different flow. We provide certain standard flows, and you can customize the flows also. So we have defined all the constants for this demo in this. So this is our tenant of B2C tenant. This is a host name for the B2C, and this is our policy. This is the policy that we use for sign up and sign in. So this is the scope that is called for FabricM. So that's how it works on FabricM. And in wrapper for B2C, the things are a little different. One is that you pass the B2C authority over here, which is sign up, sign in authority. Other things are the same. Uh, Again, for the silent, you need to pass the authority and get the info from the authority. Uh, in interactive, you do not use the broker. For B2C, it does not support the broker. So B2C is just a non-broker one. It's coming up. We have sign out, sign in, and platform config is almost the same. This is the breakpoint set, so it should pop up the dialog. All right, so I'm not using embedded here. And one thing I wanted to let you know about the embedded is that Google, if you are using the Google for authentication, Google does not want you to use the embedded view. It does not support it. So if you are using Google for authentication, make sure you use the system web view. So all right, so that's why there's no embedded view button over here. So I'll click on the sign in. So it comes over here, acquire token silent. If you go inside, it's basically uh, same as what I described earlier, what I showed you earlier. It's B2C authority. Let me run that. It came to okay, acquire token silent. This also has a B2C authority. So the MCLUI required exception, which is expected. And let's see how it goes from here. Okay, acquire token interactive. All right, so the screen here you'll see is different. You can log in, as you can see, you can log in using Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and even GitHub. GitHub supports OAuth 2. Anything that supports OAuth 2 can be configured here in your policy and can be used over here. So I'll try using the Google. So try using the Google. I had logged in previously using the demo account, so I just tap on that. The information is stored. Tap on that. It asks me which you want to use, so I'll say MAUI B2C. It should come back, and we got the authentication result back, and it has an ID token with it. ID token is basically encrypted. You have to decrypt it, but I'm not doing it as a part of this demo, so let's just run it. You see the ID token here. So good part about giving a demo to the developers is that they are happy with these kind of things. I don't have to do any pretty UIs, and if the demo fails, they are okay, they are forgiving. So I like the part about that. All right, I'll do the sign out. That's okay. That's the demo of the apps. Let me go back to the slides. So I showed you the slides. Here are the references where you can use. The package is available as a Microsoft Identity Client package. We are currently doing it as a preview package and not as a release package, but we'll release it sooner, as soon as possible. The source code for the library is available on the GitHub. You can get it there. As you can see, the work is in progress. So the MAUI status you can find in the MAUI status.md file in the GitHub. You can find the apps that I showed you are over here. You can find them there. And if you want to build a MAUI app using the Azure CI/CD pipeline, there's a blog written over here. So you can see that blog. If you want to know more about the MCL samples, how we do it, you can find all the samples over here. So that will go beyond Xamarin and what I showed. And if you want to go dig deeper into OAuth 2, different type of auth flows or app types, there's a documentation about different flows and the scenarios, what can be used and what cannot be used over here. And with that, thank you all for joining. So Yeah, back to over, James.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Samir. We did have some questions come in on our tag board over here from Twitter with #.NETConf. Rafa asks here, are there good practices for storing the user tokens and access tokens after authenticating? Or also, do any of those libraries do it for us automatically?
That's a good question. It's a very good question. MCL.NET will store the token, a refresh token for you securely. App does not have to worry about it. And when app wants to get the token, you can get the token by asking it to acquire token silent and go with that flow. So it will give you the token. So you don't have to worry about anything, storing anything at all. Just ask the MCL.NET, it will give you.
Awesome. Very cool. And also, just like David mentioned in the keynote, built into .NET MAUI are a bunch of APIs like preferences and secure storage. So if you need to store extra data, those APIs are there too. Sean over here asks, now you may, Samir, know this one or not, but was wondering with .NET MAUI, Blazor, we have the web view. There's Azure SQL integration authentication with Microsoft Data SQL Server. Have you ever seen any authentication with that or know how that works at all? Or could it work?
I have not looked into that, so it's a work in progress. I'll keep that in mind, and I'll keep that question in mind.
Awesome, good question. Another one here from Scott over here was, you use HTTP client. There is HTTP client factory. Any preference there in your source code or not really?
I use the HTTP client just for the demo purposes.
Yeah.
So whatever the best practices you want, you can use them as per your corporation. So anything is fine.
Awesome. I love in .NET, right? Use what works best for you. Well, awesome, Samir. Thank you so much. And of course, don't forget, you can also continue to tag Samir afterwards with #.NETConf for all of your questions. Thank you so much, Samir.
Thank you so much, James.